Welcome to The Thriving Marriage, the podcast for those who want to get their spouse back in love with them and truly thrive.
You'll learn why 95% of people don't save their marriage and the secret method no one else is talking about that will change everything for you. Are you ready? Let's turn tragedy to triumph.
Here are your hosts, international marriage experts Mark Johnston and Heather Choate.
Hello, everyone. Mark Johnston here with High Thrive Coaching. We are in our podcast number 31, all about narcissism. I can already see that my recording, I wasn't aware that I was live for a few seconds, but yep, I'm here. So part of the reason why I wanted to talk about this is because of the frequency in which I see the complaint or the accusation that your spouse is a narcissist, that they're being overly selfish and self-centered, and here's this thing about them, this problem. And I want to talk all about that, what it is and what can be done in these cases, and just all about the subject of narcissism. But first, before we get to that, I'm going to get into the client one of the week. So one of my clients, we will call her Cassandra, has been separated from her husband for several months now. However, after making a lot of changes in her life, they've been spending several days out of the week together. This is kind of a new thing, where she and her husband actually enjoy being around each other and are having fun. For right now, her husband is using it as an excuse for him to spend time with their child. But in many instances, their activities focus on each other with lots of laugh, lots of playful banter, some mild flirtiness. And recently, this is especially a win because some physical affection has started to be reintroduced into the relationship. Now, they still aren't open about wanting the relationship to be repaired, but it sure seems to be heading in that direction. And the reason why I wanted to bring this up, I was actually really excited for Cassandra in this case, because one of the things that I was noticing in this situation was that how her husband was starting to describe her and the relationship was starting to change. And this is a big, important moment in reconciliation. It goes from this is unfixable and you're a terrible person to kind of this idea that I enjoy being with you and this is good. And even if there isn't that firm commitment right there in that moment, I want you to remember something. If there's been a lot of damage, your spouse may need time to get used to the idea of being official again. And this is okay. So as long as you see the relationship continuing to improve, I wouldn't worry specifically about how the relationship is being currently labeled, where the commitment level is currently at. And you'll know the time when it's right to sit your partner down and ask for more official commitment. But congratulations, Cassandra. I mean, I know she's really enjoying where this is going and the amount of repair that's being done. And I just see all the signs that it's going to continue to improve there. And I know for all of you, there are, you might be worrying about whether your partner is officially committed right now. Like I said, it's okay if they need time to get used to that idea again. And you can be patient and you can work through that. So back to the topic at hand. I brought this up because I feel like there is a misconception about the term narcissism. I'm going to admit, I feel like the term is used a bit loosely. It's used a bit frequently, more frequently than is really needed, because honestly, it's only a very small percentage of people that really get diagnosed with something like narcissistic personality disorder. The official diagnosis is what is referred to as a personality disorder, meaning that it is a problem that has persisted likely throughout the person's lifetime. It's an ongoing problem that may be hard to go away, to deal with, and the person might not be unaware, or might be unaware of that they actually have a problem. This is if they actually have a real diagnosis, even if it's undiagnosed, of narcissistic personality disorder. Quite often, though, what I see happening is that the term is used to express frustration over some selfishness. Maybe your husband or wife has been focusing on themselves a little bit more. Maybe they've done some other things to pull away from the family. Maybe they have been a bit controlling. And then the accusation comes out, my husband, my wife is just such a narcissist. And I feel like there can be a strong tendency to mislabel things, especially when there's a lot of tension in a relationship. It's one, I understand it. This is one way for someone who is really frustrated or hurt to express that feeling of frustration or hurt. If they say, if they've been hurt because, their husband or wife is off doing something, maybe engaged in an affair, maybe pulling away, maybe dropping some of their responsibilities. And you say, they're being so self-centered, they're such a narcissist. This helps us to explain how we're feeling a bit better. It describes the level of frustration, our level of hopelessness, our anger towards the spouse. And I think that's really what's going on. It is people's attempt to really express some feelings here. Now, I'm not going to say that it's never valid, because certainly there may be cases where your husband or wife actually is a narcissist. And that can have a huge impact on your relationship, or if you have children, on their health and well-being. But most likely, though, just because, math, statistics, the more likely case is if your spouse is a narcissist, there's always probably been some signs. And in most cases, it's not a full-blown personality disorder. So I want to go through a couple things to help you understand this, to see whether, is my spouse actually a narcissist? Do they have narcissistic personality disorder? Or is it something else, something that I need to address more directly, some other way that I need to approach this? Because, if it's the personality disorder, I'm going to say that's going to be a very difficult situation to handle. But if it's something else, you know that you need to adjust your angle of support or attack, and that maybe you can be a little bit more supportive, understanding, and patient. Or maybe you can be a little bit more firm and set your boundaries and can more likely work. So what is narcissistic personality disorder? As with anything, I think we like to put things into little boxes. We like to say, this is what it is. But more and more within the mental health community, we move towards more of an idea of a spectrum of behaviors. We even use this, you might hear of the spectrum, especially in terms of autism. And just like in autism, many other problems have a spectrum. You might be very mildly depressed such that it's not affecting you much, or you might have full-blown major depressive disorder where it's crippling and you're hardly able to get out of bed in the day. Just like with autism, you might be high-functioning autism, where you have some small obsessions or have a hard time reading emotion, or you might be very severely autistic where you can't hardly communicate, or you can't communicate with other people. And you may not even be, that this highly autistic person might be very unaware of other people in general. Same thing with narcissistic personality disorder. But when we are looking at this disorder in particular, there are key traits. I'm going to be honest, I'm going to be going right out of the DSM-5, which is the Diagnostic and Statistical Manual of Mental, I'm going to butcher this. It's basically like the psychologist dictionary. It gives out definitions for different diagnoses. So in this case, it talks about people with this disorder having a grandiose logic of self-importance. They feel like they themselves are much more important than other people, even those close to them, strangers, everyone. There's a fixation with fantasies of infinite success or control or brilliance or beauty or idyllic love. So, basically what's being described here is they are focused with things being ideal, especially things that are connected to them. They need to be perfect, they need to have their looks perfected. They need to have their relationships. If it's not 100% like this fantasy ideal, then there must be something wrong with the other person, or that they have to be successful in business or else. There may be a credence that he or she is extraordinary or exceptional and can only be understood or should be in contact with other extraordinary or exceptional or important people or institutions. So there is kind of the sense that they themselves are so special that they shouldn't have to deal with those around them who are not as special. There might be a desire for unwarranted admiration, as in they might say, they might want that admiration even if they don't do anything. They might be just around sitting at the table, and just wanting to talk about how great they are. There might be a sense of entitlement, that they deserve more than other people. Don't I deserve the best? Don't I deserve more than this person? I'm so much better than that person. Their interpersonal relationships, their relationship with other people is going to be much more oppressive than is warranted, such that they are going to want to exert their will in a much more heavy-handed manner. They're going to have very, very little empathy, or actually no form of empathy, as in they are going to have a really hard time looking at things from other people's perspectives. And they really might have a lot of resentment of others, or that they, this idea that they are resentful of them because they're so successful. Basically, I hope you're getting the picture here that people with a narcissistic personality disorder are not just selfish. It goes so much above and beyond that. It's selfish to the point of not even recognizing other people as people, almost. There are other models of this, and typically, though, the general characteristics of something like this is that people with a narcissistic personality disorder have, a good amount or even a lot of impairment in personality functioning in a few different areas. In terms of having some individuality, as in recognizing that individuality in other people. Recognizing that other people might have different opinions or choices than they do. They might have some really strong impairment in self-direction, as in they see themselves, as so important, and they don't get things done. They don't know what to do, and then they're blaming other people. It's because they're too good for this and other people are getting in the way. It would be kind of those together. There'd be a fair amount of impairment with empathy, seeing perspectives of others, or closeness, being able to be close to another person. So this is kind of more like the very clinical explanation of things. But what does this look like in a practical setting? So in a practical setting, you're going to see a high focus on their needs at the expense of others. But I'm going to say it's not narcissism if they're just simply trying to focus on themselves. If they've been giving at other points in their life and they're a bit fed up with it and they want to explore their own freedom, they explore their own desires for a bit, that's pointing to a different problem. It's, in a practical setting, they would be about getting what they want, even if they are knowingly hurting someone else, even if it seems like they know that it's going to hurt someone else, and they just don't care. But, it's specifically the lack of empathy that's a telltale sign in a scenario like that. You might see that the narcissistic individual must win every argument, or it's really terrible. a terrible, terrible thing if someone disagrees with them. But it's not narcissism if they assert themselves. But in other circumstances, they do listen to other people's opinions. You might see a joy or an emphasis on needing to punish others if they've been slighted. But it's not narcissism if they're simply needing to stand up for themselves, if they are setting some boundaries, if they are trying to be healthy in and of themselves. You're also going to see that they settle for nothing but the best for themselves. They only can, they deserve to wear designer clothing, and they deserve to eat at the best restaurants, and it doesn't matter what everyone else gets around them. But it's not narcissism if there's a preference for a certain interest to be nice. For me, I really enjoy eating good food, and I have a preference for eating good food and to going to some nice restaurants, to cooking nice meals. I want that for myself, but it's one area. And even with that, I want other people to experience it as well. So just wanting really nice things is not necessarily a trait. So I wanted to make this distinction here, and I want to say it's not narcissism when someone starts acting out of self-interest suddenly. It's not narcissism if they're not cooperating with you. That doesn't mean that's what it is. It's not narcissism if they turn away from family suddenly, if they stop contact with their children or with you, if they go off to have time for themselves, even if it's above and beyond what you think is normal. It's not narcissism if they're having an affair, even while it hurts other people. Not necessarily that. I'm trying to make this distinction here because it's really important. Because if you're saying my husband or wife is simply a narcissist, it kind of goes along with this idea that there's nothing that can be done. And you start thinking of your spouse as this selfish person. And so what you need to solve is their selfishness. When in many cases, people might be acting selfish for many other reasons. They may be acting selfish because they themselves are hurt, because they've allowed resentment to build up for a long time, not speaking up for themselves. And they've had enough. And they want something different in life. They might be pulling away because they're hurt and they don't feel like other people are understanding them. And I see this a lot in cases of abandonment and affairs. It's an inability to be able to address concerns or to address needs and wants in a healthy manner. And so they step away from these things. They avoid what they really need to talk about in order to get what they want. And if it's much more like that, if that's the real problem, then labeling this as narcissism doesn't really help. It doesn't actually get you into a conversation that is going to lead to a good solution. If, however, you do feel like your spouse is 100% truly a narcissist, I'm going to say that in those circumstances, it is classified as a personality disorder for a reason. And it's very unlikely that the person is going to recognize their problem, seek out help. And if they do, it's going to be a long, difficult process. And so you need to ask yourself, is this a situation that I'm willing to continue fighting for, even if their behavior doesn't get better? And, as much as we here at High Thrive Coaching like to give a lot of hope and like to take on really difficult crises and help those people who don't know where else to turn to, that's the kind of situation that we thrive in here. There's going to be times when I ask all of you, is this really what I'm looking for? Now, if you're not sure if your marriage is salvageable, if it's something that you should continue working towards, well, certainly I would invite you to come and talk to us. to see if, say our program is a good fit, to see if perhaps there is something that we can do to help you. And certainly we would like to be there. You can always go to our website, www.highthrivecoaching.com/apply. You can talk with a member of our team. It's a free call. They can answer some questions, see if we can help. So normally at this point, we have a marriage mythbuster, but I'm going to just say that, basically this entire podcast thus far has been that. It has been trying to dispel this myth that because a spouse is acting selfishly, it must be because they are a narcissist, possessing a personality disorder that is long-lasting or highly damaging. And I'm going to say that's not always the case, as you can tell here. Quite often, there are more reasonable explanations for what is going wrong, and those are always going to be better avenues to explore before you settle on something like a personality disorder like that. I do think that what happens in these cases is that as tension rises, as frustration rises, it becomes easy to mislabel, misinterpret, misunderstand your spouse. And if it's easy for you to come to a conclusion like this, if it's easy for you to say, my husband or my wife is a narcissist, imagine how easy it is for them to equally get frustrated and hurt and misinterpret or mislabel you. And this is the point I'm trying to make today, is that quite often we give much stronger labels, much more severe labels than may be warranted. And this in and of itself does make reconciliation more difficult. So I want each and every one of you to check yourself. How am I describing my partner? Am I giving them, the shadow of the doubt? Do I, can I see reasonably how they have come to the conclusions that they've come to? If you can't offer that understanding towards your spouse, you're going to have an awfully difficult time fixing any sort of major problem. And oftentimes, this is the first sort of step that I like to take with many of my clients, is helping them to find better understanding for themselves and the concerns that their spouse is seeing. Even when it's really difficult, even when your partner's pulling away and they're hardly talking, there's always somewhere where we can gain some better understanding. Anyways, I hope that was all helpful for all of you. We should hopefully be seeing Heather here in coming weeks, though we're going to give her a break here, give her some time off, considering what's going on in her life. I'm sure she's made some announcements. I don't want to go too much into it, but she's fine. Just they have a baby. So hopefully we'll see her sometime soon. But until then, I will come here for help. We'd love to help you. See you all next week.
Thanks for listening to The Thriving Marriage, your A to Z blueprint for not just surviving marriage, but thriving. Until next time, my friends, thrive on.